Hello, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of the Narrative Experience podcast. I am your host, Mariam. We're finally coming to the end of the Korean series One Ordinary Day, and I hope this has been an experience for you as much as it has for me. We're all humans, and we constantly look back and think to ourselves, I should not have said that. I should have done that. I should have asked questions. I should have suspected. I shouldn't have run. Those mistakes that we look back upon, is it right if one of them defines our entire life? If a question we should have asked, a situation we should have confronted, suddenly branded us as a murderer? Do you think Hyunsu will ever be free from the mistake of running when he should have stayed? Will he be free or will he die a murderer? The trial began with both sides making their opening statements. Have I mentioned this was a jury trial? Well, it is. Hyunsu's lawyer believed that he had a better chance with average people rather than leaving it to the judge. I thought differently. I believe the judge is more likely to look at things rationally and come to a conclusion that there was no direct evidence tying him to the crime compared to the common folks who might look at things emotionally. However, Lawyer believed that the series of mistakes Hyunsu made would make him relatable to everyone, as everyone makes stupid mistakes and does things they regret, but that doesn't make them guilty of one of the most violent crimes. The prosecutor started by stating that she had hundreds of evidence proving Hyunsu was the murderer, and she started laying them out and presenting her witnesses. If you guys follow the events of that night, you can easily tell what evidences are going to be presented. Guys, I'd like you to transport yourself back to that night. Are you there? Good. Now I'm going to present the evidences in the order they came about on that night. First, the removal of the dashboard camera from the taxi shows intent and a premeditated crime. Two, he drove a long distance without accepting any passenger until the victim, showing that he deliberately rejected others and waited until he found the right prey, which is a drunk, fragile woman. Three, instead of just dropping her off, he went into the house with her, showing that he had expectations about what would happen that night. Four, after leaving, he went back and broke into the house, so he's undeniably guilty of breaking and entering. Five, six, I don't know. His rough attempt to get rid of evidence by wiping bloodstains off the table. Driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Also, the murder weapon was found on him. Then, after he was arrested, the blood that was on his body when he was sprayed with the chemical that detects blood, even after it's been wiped. Also, his blood and urine test results showed a list of drugs found in his system, including LSD, ketamine, and alcohol. There were other evidences presented, but these were the major ones. The witnesses that the prosecutor called were the female police officer who stopped him that night as he was driving recklessly. Also, she called his high school teacher who said he once fought with a classmate, leaving the classmate with serious injuries. Like, okay, we get it, but really? How does this relate to the murder case that's happening right now? Anyways, normally in a crime case, there's a presumption of innocence, which basically means that you're innocent until found guilty. This puts the pressure on the prosecutor to provide more than enough evidence that sufficiently proves that he's guilty of murder. Now, this is how the legal system is supposed to work, but lawyers are there for a reason. Sometimes you're going to have to defend yourself, and in Hyunsu's case, defending him can be a bit tricky due to so many factors, like he's actually guilty of some of the crimes presented, and is the last known person to see the victim alive. And while there is no definite evidence that he did it, there's also none that says he didn't. So Hyunsu's lawyer's strategy is to show that the investigation of the police is biased. After arresting Hyunsu, they focused all investigation on him without considering other possible suspects. Lawyer, while doing legwork, found that, which is not something that's difficult to find, he found that the victim had a roommate until a week before her death. He met up with the roommate to find out the reason for the separation and discovered that her drug dealer boyfriend cheated on her with the victim. Of course, she didn't tell him all that willingly. He has his ways. He also searched for the victim's family members. Her mother had passed, but she had a stepfather who was the inheritor of her assets and insurance after her passing. Lawyer also visited the traffic control unit and looked through the security cameras on the streets from where he also left the house to where he picked the lady up until he got to her house. One thing he noticed was that the delivery truck owner at the petrol station, if you guys can remember, the one that gave lady a dirty look when she threw a cigarette out of the car, he kept following them. He followed them all the way to the Hankang River and even to the lady's house. On further investigation, lawyer found out that the guy was a sex offender who was just released from prison and is still wearing an ankle monitor. Now, the guy Hyunsu accidentally hit his car as it was parked in front of lady's house that night. He testified to the police that he saw Hyunsu enter the house with the lady. The police treated him like a witness and just accepted his testimony without questioning why he was parked in front of someone else's house at 11 p.m. When lawyers studied the security footage, well, that was not the first time that guy was parked in front of our house. He constantly comes there, gets out of the car, and just watches the house. All these were what lawyer presented at the court to show the bias and inadequacies of the police and show that there are just as many suspects and nothing is definitive. He questioned the roommates because she could have killed the victim because the victim slept with her boyfriend. Now, not saying that she definitely did because there is no evidence to support that, but it's something that should have been looked into by the police. But they didn't even question her at all. I mean, people have killed others for less, so it's not an overreach. He questioned the roommate's drug dealer boyfriend. He didn't say it was a drug dealer, okay, because that's relevant. But the guy could have killed her because his girlfriend broke up with him when the victim told her they slept together. He also questioned her stepfather, who benefited the most from her death. He has an alibi, but it's still an angle that should have been pursued. He wanted to question the sex offender, the guy who followed them from the petrol station, but when he went to meet the guy to talk to him, and he was like, I'm Hyunsu's lawyer. While checking through the security cameras, I noticed you were following them. What's up with that? The guy attacked him with an hammer, so he ended up in jail. But when they checked the records of his ankle monitor, it showed that he wasn't at Lady's house at the time of her death. And the guy that was constantly in front of Lady's house is apparently the roommate's stalker, not Lady's. Lawyer also revealed that Leader, the head of the police in charge of Hyunsu's case, removed an evidence from the crime scene. Remember, Leader returned Hyunsu's inhaler to him after I picked it up from the crime scene. Well, that's illegal, and he did not do it out of the goodness of his heart. The inhaler humanized Hyunsu and made it seem like he was just a weak college student, so he got rid of it by returning it to him. What should have been done is that if Hyunsu really needed the inhaler, they should have got him another one. Lawyer used this to prove that if Leader removed a piece of evidence from the crime scene, who's to say he didn't remove other more crucial evidence? Lawyer rounded up by presenting other minor evidences to show that Hyunsu is not the cold-blooded murderer that he's been presented as, but that some of the events of that night happened because he panicked. After both sides gave their concluding statements, it was up to the jury to come to a decision on guilty or innocent. There were 9 jury members, and after discussion, 4 voted guilty, 5 voted non guilty. However, the jury are not the ones giving the final verdict, it's the judge. I mean, can you imagine? So, what's the essence of calling it a jury trial if the decision of the jury doesn't even matter? I don't know, the justice system, they weird sometimes. Anyway, before the judge makes his final decision, he asks if Hyunsu, the accused, has a final statement or appeal to make. Hyunsu stands, makes a short statement that ends with, "Am I a killer? I don't know." Well, he's not going to be winning any speech awards anytime soon. After all he has gone through, all the pain and torture, physically and emotionally, he still thinks that this form of sincerity is what is needed from him. I'm not saying he shouldn't be sincere. Some of those judges, they've probably seen a lot. They can tell fake from real. But he should be strategic about what to say, what not to say, how and when to use certain words. Or he should just shut up. What does it mean by "I don't know"? The judge's decision is as follows. The court has carefully reviewed the counsel's arguments regarding the lack of definitive evidence, the police's inadequate investigation, and the evidence that could be deemed inadmissible. However, the court has concluded that the investigation and indictments were sufficient and reasonable, and that Mr. Kim is objectively guilty of the charges brought against him. Ergo, the court has concluded that Mr. Kim is guilty of most of the charges brought against him, and that Mr. Kim is guilty of Miss Hongoka's murder. Since he still insists that he does not remember anything, and is showing no remorse, the court hereby sentences him. Hyunsu's eyebrows were pulled together, his lips tight against each other like he was wondering, waiting for the sentence, so he could decide what expression to make. His eyes were darting left and right as he focused into space, ears perked up to hear the judgment. What is it gonna be? Is this it? The court hereby sentences him to life imprisonment. Hyunsu was a common average boy from a simple family. He had a naivety about him that was quite endearing, and everyone at some point in our lives has this simpleness, this uncomplicated and beautiful way of looking at the world and interacting with it. But life happens. It hits us in some way or another that transforms us, and for most of us, takes away this naivety. This transformation happens through a form of loss: the loss of a loved one, loss of livelihood, hope, belonging, a loss of self, a loss of purpose. This loss changes us, transforms us from who we were to who we are to who we'll be. Hyunsu's loss and transformation was brutal, as a part of him was forcefully yanked out and cut off. Every one of us lives life expecting the expected and expecting the unexpected. We expect the expected, like, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, the class is gonna be boring, my boss at work is gonna give me work to do. These things haven't happened, but we expect it to happen based on what has always happened. We also expect the unexpected, like, I could have a stomachache if I eat too much. Rain fell yesterday, so I could fall on my way to work. The lecturer could cancel a class today, and I'll have free time. These things are expected, unexpected, but we don't expect the extremes. I mean, sometimes we think about them, but we don't expect extremes like suddenly getting a transfer of $500 million in your account, or becoming a rapist and murderer on your way to a friend's party. Hyunsu's lawyer, even after the verdict, refused to give up until he found the murderer. Yes, he did. He found the murderer. It was the doctor of the rehabilitation center who usually sold fentanyl to the victim. Apparently, they were together until she found out he was married and decided to break things off with him. So he killed her. Hyunsu ended up being released, but his life is never gonna be the same. He's never gonna be the same. Can he ever wash away the stain of being a murderer? Because people will still call him one. Does he even believe he's not one? We've come to the end of this three-part narration of the Korean series One Ordinary Day. Thank you for sticking with me through it. Comment down below on your thoughts and what you'd like to hear from me. And if you like what you're hearing, give it a like, a subscribe, and a follow. Until the next episode, adios.